on to an NHS meeting, they were thinking about cutting the hospital, and was horrified the approach the NHS was taking was basically being told this is going to happen, and we ran a very successful campaign between 2005 and 2008 and kept, lo and behold, A&E, maternity and paediatrics at the other end of the hospital. I thought, great job, well done. In my naivety, thought that was it, because it was clinically right to do so then. The argument had been won. In 2012, the same acute trust hospital with the same problem basically said we need to cut A&E, maternity and paediatrics, was the kind of gist of where they were heading. 3 years on, after what we were told would be a 6-month process, we are still battling that. We are a evidence-based campaign. Everything in the report is in the public domain and is available in Annex A. There's a web link that's been sent to you if you need to cross-reference any of those documents. And really the scope of the report can be found at point 12 of it. And really it's based on documentary evidence given in Annex A, and it's been produced within a short timeline. The reason for that is things move on very quickly, and what we needed, following a disappointing meeting with Jeremy Hunt and David Florey down in London, was an independent opinion of what's actually gone over the past 3 years. Because as a group, we have grave concerns about what's happened. We have grave concerns about the trust, and we thought that all came to a head with 5 A&E consultants leaving. Well, we went down to London to be told, well, yeah, there's problems, but it's business as normal. And we needed to touch base relatively quickly with an independent opinion to make sure that we were still heading in the right direction and sticking to the evidence as we saw it. Gary had contacted the campaign previously regarding headlines he'd seen, and really we were able to persuade him to do this opinion for us. So what I'll do now is I'll run briefly through the executive points of the report, and then tell you where we're going with the campaign next, and then we're open to questions. So if you really looking at the executive summary on the front page of the report. As I said, for 3 years there's been considerable uncertainty about the future of the Alex, and despite several NHS internal reviews, in Gary's opinion, and certainly David Alex's opinion, it's failed to generate a reasonable range of options for provision of services. No options have yet to go to public consultation. In 2014, an independent panel came in to examine 2 options. So it had been reduced from what was 6 options at the start down to 2, with very little public engagement at that stage. And they concluded, among other things, that an option for another provider to take on the Alex or be involved in Worcestershire should not be taken forward. In Mr. Walker's opinion, that decision was wrong. And the reason for that, moving on to point 3, is that the process adopted by the NHS appears deeply flawed. We've said it many times, and I'm really pleased that Mr. Walker's agreed with it. All options required the continuation of Worcester Acute Hospitals Trust. The priority for commissioners, the CCG, so Reddish and Bromsgrove, South Worcestershire CCG and White Horse, is a priority for them. It's the provision of services, not the protection of providers and organisation. That is absolutely key to where we are, because at the moment everything's been about how do you solve a Worcestershire problem by just dealing with the current provider in Worcestershire. That is madness. N in the NHS stands for national. The independent clinical review panel didn't examine or refer to the financial problems at the acute trust. So they're saying, well, here's a model that could work. We've ruled out somebody who might be able to provide it, and they didn't even look at whether this current trust has the money to do it. And here we are, a year and a few months on from that report, and they're forecasting a deficit of 25.9 million this year. And any model of service would need to address this. What must not happen is that in my opinion, 18 months' time, if the current model goes forward, is that we're sat in this room again launching Save the Alex campaign, because it doesn't work. That is bad for staff, it's bad for the public, it's bad for patients. It is a bad way to manage change. It's got to be on at least a 5-year cycle. The NHS, by their own words, are saying short to medium term, meaning anywhere between 2 to 5 years. That is not an acceptable way, with one option saying the way forward. The acute hospitals trust have failed to meet key performance targets for months and in some cases years. That is not a reflection on frontline staff. Over 3 years, all of us in the campaign had first-hand experience of the care that's offered, and we have no doubt about the commitment of frontline staff. What we do have concern about, and Mr. Walker opinion agrees with, is the government failure of the trust. Yes, winter pressures, but at Worcester Royal they haven't met their A&E target for the past 13 months. That's not winter pressures. That is, there's something wrong, and you haven't responded to it. To start off with a 9.8 million deficit forecast and then go to 25.9 million deficit is not a way to financially forecast and manage a trust. If it was any other organisation, the people at the head of that would have been, they would be asked to consider their position. What Mr. Walker does suggest is that the Trust Development Authority should consider appointing a new board. As I said, we've met with David Flowey. He recognised and said that the Trust is underperforming and they have to do better. It seems clear to us, given that staff are now working with the feet, that they are not going to respond. This is not an organisation that can turn things around and deliver. In August 2014, the NHS England assurance process said that the process that we've been in for the past 2 and a bit years had not met 7 of the 8 required standards, and that can be found, that letter can be found in the annex online. And those standards are set out in the planning and delivering service change to patients. These standards include a requirement to ensure clinical and financial sustainability. Had not met. The independent panel report was January 2014, and in August 2014 they still hadn't got together a good enough plan that NHS England would be good. That is, again, a failure of trust, of CCGs, of NHS England, of all the people involved in this. And who takes responsibility for that? I wish somebody could tell me, because it seems that nobody is accountable. We were told that the CCGs have the whip hand. Well, everybody knows what Greenwich and Bromsgrove CCG would like to see. Everybody knows perhaps what South Worcestershire CCG would like to see. So who holds the balance of power? Who drives that forward? Who makes the big decision? Who is accountable for this 3-year debacle? And then we come to point 7. The people at the end of all this, the uncertainty. And to give you an idea, 150 people a day attend the A&E service at the Alex, so it's not small numbers. It's not a couple of people are going to be affected and have to go a bit further. It is 23 miles hospital to hospital. 42 women give birth every week at that hospital. Worcester, currently, when they're on overflow, which in my understanding is a lot of the time, divert to the Alex. There's a letter from Birmingham Women's Hospital saying we have no capacity to take women from Redditch. None of that has been explained in the public. How do they intend to do that? There's no room at the Worcester site. So how are you going to suddenly magic the room for 2,100 births a year? How are you going to suddenly magic room for 6,000 ambulances a year to go there? The independent clinical panel made clear what was required, yet this trust has failed to work with 5 ED consultants that resulted in them leaving on the 13th of February. And despite pressure from HOS, the public and the media, they refused to come and tell us why. That is not good enough. There is a letter out there written to the trust explaining why they left, which we believe, our understanding is not said you can release, and the trust are unwilling to do so, which is why earlier this week Save the Alex campaign put in an FOI request for that letter, because we believe it's in the public interest. So, where do we go from here? That map, it's at the back of the report, it's also available online, was produced by the Future of Acute Hospital Services Worcestershire, and really that is all admissions that go to the Alex. And so when people say, oh, it's all about Greenwich, well, no, it's all about Greenwich, Bromsgrove, South Warwickshire and South Birmingham. People from Kings Norton come to the Alex to give birth. It's not just about Greenwich. It serves a population of over 200,000 people. That is why last time they couldn't cut it and make it into a cottage hospital, and that is why this time it's taken 3 years of arguing and delaying and debarbling by the Acute Trust to realise that it doesn't work. Because if Save the Alex campaign wasn't based on fact and wasn't winning with that fact, these changes would have happened by now. And that is a message the trust need to accept. From a campaign point of view, where do we go from here? If I could draw your attention to the very last point that Gary makes on page 87. Point 87, so not page 87. CCG should urgently and within 2 months commence a consultation on a range of options for the future provision of all what services, including the Alex, possibly being transferred to UHB. And then it goes on to talk about PERDA. Why is this urgent? Why suddenly are we saying this? Because staff are leaving. Despite clinical opinion saying you've got to have an adult emergency department that accepts blue light cases, if you can't staff that, you can't have it. And because the staff have left, I don't see too many people signing up to work for this trust when they can't even say why the other people left, can't even give a firm commitment to what's going to be there. To allow that consultation to happen, West Midlands Clinical Senate currently hold a report, which is completed, about their opinion of the clinical model developed since January 2014. That report is being held back. It is being held back by somebody in NHS England, be it for political reasons or others, we don't know. That report needs to be released as a minimum to the programme board so that it can be decided whether what works. In Save the Alex's opinion, if the report said yes, the model worked up, was lovely and everything's fine, it would have been released on the day it was written. I suspect that the report is fairly damning of what has happened and what is suggested for the Alex, and I suspect that's why the 5 ED consultants left, that they weren't listened to. That report as a minimum needs to be released to the programme board, but ideally to the whole public so we can understand what's happening with our hospital, and that needs to happen definitely before the general election, but in my opinion by the end of this week, so that everybody can move forward and consider the options. To that end, we launched a petition, online petition on Sunday, and with no media, official media support, that's been signed by over 150 people already, saying, release this report, let's get on with it. It's no way to manage change. We also would like to draw the attention of the NHS to this report. I've sent it to all the key members I can think of. They need to engage with it, read it. It's not me saying it, it's a guy who has looked up all the publicly available information and given an opinion. We know Gary Walker's background. He's got nothing to gain from providing this opinion, and I'm hoping that the NHS choose to respond to your questions today or over the next few days, and I'm hoping that they take note of the points that Gary suggests, because if they don't, it is Save the Alex's opinion that if this is buried because of election or because of PERDA or because it's a difficult decision, We are going to walk in blindly to June. We're going to wake up and find, sorry mate, there's no staff that want to work for us, and our debt's a bit worse, and it will go because of bad management, not because of good management. That is not acceptable. That concludes what I want to say about the report. Thank you very much.